Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Western Association for College Admission Counseling Virtual College Fair. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. A few housekeeping items before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen at any time to type in questions to our presenters about everything they are discussing today. Your camera and microphone are turned off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. This is also just one of many different sessions happening today, so be able to ensure that you sign up for additional ones as well. And this presentation is being recorded and will be available within about a week at the same site where you registered. Now I'll turn it over to our first panelist, Brianne, and she's going to get us started for today.
Hello, nice to have everybody here. My name is Brianne Boyle. I am a college counselor in the Orange County, California area. So I work with students down here to help them through the process of applying to college. And I'm also the next president of the Western Association of College Admission Counseling. So thanks for being here. I'll hand it off to Dewey.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dewey Wilmot. I'm a counselor in San Jose, California, and a member of Western Association for College Admission Counseling. Glad you could be here to learn more about the personal statement. I will pass it off to Julio.
Hi, everybody. My name is Julio Mata, and I am a director of college counseling at Francis Parker School in San Diego. Super excited to be having this conversation with all of you and sharing this information. This is personally one of my favorite topics to talk about with students. So there's going to be a lot of information. For this presentation, we're going to be sharing a video of a pre-recorded session with the intention of having you engage with the content that we're sharing in real time. So if you have any questions about anything that's brought up in the presentation, feel free to drop it in the Q&A, and all three of us will be in the chat, in the Q&A answering questions in real time, and then also leaving plenty of time afterwards for question and answers in person as well in live format. So don't be shy. Drop in any questions you have, either really specific or really broad. We're here for all those kinds of questions. So let me go ahead and share my screen and get us started. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the WACAC College Fair session for how to approach your personal statement. My name is Julio Mata, and I am one of the directors of college counseling at Francis Parker School in San Diego, California, and I will be one of your presenters for the session today. My co-presenters will introduce themselves later on in this session, but for now, let's go ahead and get started. So when we're talking about the college essay, I think the first question we always have to start with is, why is this a thing? Why are colleges making you write essays about yourself? And as you see on the slide, this essay really has a very special job throughout your application process. Basically, it allows you to bring more of yourself into your application. And so that way you're not just more than a set of numbers, a GPA and test score, that you are so much more than that. And as part of this, it also gives you an opportunity to provide context, to provide stories of your background, stories of your experience in your voice to help inform what your high school experience has been like to college admission counselors who are reviewing your application. This also allows your personality to come through, allows you to show a little bit more of your sense of humor or your way of seeing things, your perspective on certain issues, the beliefs and values that you hold dear to you and who make you part of who you are. All of this is essential to being able to allow college admission counselors to be able to really provide the best review of your application as much as possible. So oftentimes when I'm working with students as they're writing their personal statements or college essays, I find that there are several misconceptions that come up. And so I'd like to address a couple of them right now, just in case some of you are thinking about these very same things right now as you're approaching your college essay or thinking about it. First, the first point you see there, I don't have to summarize my entire life into 650 words or 500 words or however many words you're allowed to write for this essay. The fact of the matter is, you're not. No college is expecting you to summarize all 16, 17, 18 years of your life into any amount of words because that's right near impossible. So don't try to do that. Instead, focus on one specific story, one specific experience, and let that be a snapshot of your life to provide some context into some of your experience growing up or some of your lived experiences so far in school. So like that point says, don't tell them everything, tell them something about yourself. Next, there's this big misconception that you're supposed to have this really emotional story as part of your college essay. And the fact of the matter is, you don't. That is not an expectation in the slightest. If you happen to have a story that is emotional, that is really difficult to share it if you feel that it's important for college admission reps to understand your lived experience in high school, not just because you have this sad story. That doesn't do anything other than make the reader sad when they're reading it, right? Or make them feel something emotional, some kind of emotional connection. But the most important thing is, does this story share something, shed some light on your experience as a high school student? Then you want to share that. So if you don't have a story like this, please don't take a story that's not a sad or emotional story and make it sad. So don't catastrophize. Make sure that you're focusing on showcasing your specific values and experiences that you've lived, because that's good enough. That's enough for colleges to get to know you and who you are. Additionally, another big misconception is that oftentimes students say, oh, those shorter essays that are like 150 words, 200 words, I'll just put those off until the last minute. I can pound those out in no time. When, quite honestly, some of those shorter essays tend to be some of the hardest essays to write, because it requires you to use those few words that you have really, really efficiently. So make sure you prioritize those shorter supplemental essays, just as much as you are this standard Common App essay or general personal statement that you have to write for some colleges. And finally, so there's a lot of misconceptions that you can write this essay in the very same way that you would write an academic paper for school. And the fact of the matter is, this is very different style of writing. As you'll see as we continue with the presentation, this isn't supposed to be a 5-paragraph essay with an introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. You're not limited to that kind of structure. You're open to write however you want to. At the same time, this isn't a personal journal or an academic essay. So it's kind of something in between. So it's this fine line that you'll have to navigate with that. And you'll see some more examples as we continue with the presentation. Now, it's also very likely that you're thinking about this Common App, this personal statement, and not really sure what you're expected to write. You probably heard some ideas, some rumors, if you've heard some friends who are seniors who've written these essays, just what they're asking for. So we thought it would be really good for you to see just a couple of examples of some typical college essay prompts that you'll be facing coming up. So we have decided to highlight 3 different types. We have the common application prompt, we have a University of California application prompt, and then also a couple supplemental prompts from different universities. So if you look at the question that's being asked in the common application prompt, you have to kind of read between the lines here and see what they're actually asking you to write about. It says, the lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? If you noticed, it's asking you to do 3 things, not just one. A lot of students focus on the recounting a time, telling a story, and leave very little space and time dedicated to the final 2 parts, which is how did that story affect you? How did that experience affect you? And what did you learn from it? Those should be the parts that make up the majority of your writing, as opposed to the first part of the prompt, which is telling a story. With the supplemental essays, you also see 3 different prompts, and they're very, very different. The one that you see that's going to be most common is some variation of briefly describe how you learned about this institution, or tell us why you want to apply here, or why you think you're a good fit at this school. And those are typically shorter essays that require a lot of time and thinking for you to be able to say how exactly you feel you are a good match for that institution. Another one that's kind of unique, some other unique ones that kind of, again, run the gamut as to what supplemental essays look like. From the University of Richmond, you have a prompt that says, tell us about spiders. And they ask that question because their mascot is the spiders. But are they asking you to write about athletics, school spirit, about actual spiders? We don't know. That's for you. That's a choice that you get to make. And then Wake Forest also asks the question, give us your top 10 list. That's it. You get to make a top 10 list of anything that you want to rank from 1 to 10. So it's really open-ended. It's a chance for you to showcase your personality, to showcase your interests in a very unique way based on those essay prompts. And then finally, we have the University of California prompts, just one example of their personal insight questions you see below. And the University of California questions are designed to be basically a written interview. So you're expected to be much more direct with your answers than with other prompts where you're telling a story, kind of setting up a narrative. Just kind of get to the point, answer the question specifically like you see it listed.
Hello, my name is Jenny Uribe. I am a college counselor at Cristo Rey San Jose Jesuit High School. And students oftentimes ask, what do I even write in my college essay? Where do I even start? I have no idea what I even want to include. And it's always important to start with putting yourself in the shoes of the reader, right? The person that's going to be reading through your entire application and making a decision on whether or not to offer admissions. By the time they get to your college essay, they've oftentimes already read through your transcript. They understand your GPA, the type of AP courses that you may have taken, honors, IB. They see your grades and they understand a little bit more about your high school. So they're getting an understanding of your academic record. So you'll notice here in this brainstorm web that your academic record is kind of pulled to the side. The gray circles around it are filled in because that's kind of already taken care of by the time they get to your essay. So your essay is really an opportunity to share more about yourself beyond your academic record, right? Beyond your grades and beyond the rigor and the context of your high school. It's an opportunity to kind of share more about yourself through these 5 buckets. So what are your values and personal qualities, your ability to overcome challenges, talents and accomplishments, your identity, and of course, your dreams and aspirations. How do we even start, when you think about your life and trying to fit it into these different categories, it can be a little challenging. So start with reflection. Start with giving yourself the time to reflect on the significant experiences that have happened in your life that have shaped you to be who you are today. I'm going to return to this web, but first I'd like to share with you 3 different tools to help guide your reflection. So at the top here, you'll see a tree. The tree is a great tool if you are the type of student who already takes the initiative in your life to reflect. You're already in practice of doing that. You're a bit more of an abstract thinker. Then the tree is a great fit for you. The roots represent significant experiences. The trunk represents support and values, and the leaves represent your dreams. And so you can just kind of do a brain dump and think about all of these significant things in your life and kind of put it on paper, right? If you're more of like a creative student, someone who is a bit more artistic, then maybe the river of life is a better reflection tool for you. Blank piece of paper and really drawing out your life through the representation of a river. So maybe there's a tumultuous time in your life and you want to express that through a rushing river. Maybe you're hoping for your future to be a bit more calm. So you express that through a calm stream through the river, right? You can incorporate pictures and different symbols to document, your whole life through the representation of a river. Another piece is the lifeline. So drawing a line across a piece of paper, marking born, current, and future, and talking through and really reflecting on those significant experiences. Maybe you're more of a logical thinker, sequential thinker. That would be a great fit for you. Once you've identified the best tool to guide your reflection, you want to think about these guiding questions here. What are those significant experiences that have shaped you to be who you are today? Who's been there for you as you've pursued your goals? What do you value most that's helped you keep focused on your goals? And what are your dreams, right? Giving yourself this time to just openly reflect and kind of do a huge, just pouring yourself onto a piece of paper without this framework of I need to put this into my college essay, like just really writing down everything that's been so significant to you is a great starting place, because then you can actually use the brainstorm tool, the brainstorm web, to pull information from your reflection into these different categories. So maybe being an older sibling and being the first to go off to college is something that you're really proud of. It's an accomplishment. Maybe it's something that you are just so excited that you've been able to make happen. Maybe it's more of an overcoming a challenge, having younger siblings, having to take care of and making sure that their academics are on track while your academics are on track too. Maybe that's it actually for you more of a challenge that you had to overcome. So really no right or wrong way of how to use this brainstorm web, but it's really for you to kind of categorize all the significant experiences that you've taken the time to reflect on and organizing it. Once you've organized all of the different experiences that you've had in your life, then it's helpful to start creating an outline. So for each significant experience, so for example, being the older sibling, you want to ask yourself, what happened? What did you learn? And why does this matter, right? Students often ask, am I done with my essay? Is this what's going to get me admitted? Is this a good enough essay? Is there anything missing? Is there anything I should add? And to determine whether or not you have all the content there, asking these 3 questions is a really great place to kind of reassure yourself that you're there. So if you're able to make sure that you answer the question of what happened, that should really just be a third of the essay of what happened, right? 2/3 of your essay should really be about what you learned and why does this matter, right? And once you're able to reflect on the experiences that you've had on your life, organize them into a brainstorm web, and create an outline through those 3 questions, then you've actually finished the very first phase of developing your essay. And you're ready to actually now open up a document and start drafting your essay. It's great to get feedback, not from like 20 different individuals, because that would be way too many different perspectives and opinions, but like 1 or 2 folks who you know well and know you well, and will be direct in giving you feedback, right? And anticipate to write multiple drafts. You're not going to get this in the first version. So, and then the very last phase is grammar and word count, right? Once you've written a few revisions to your essay, you're ready to then talk about your grammar and word count. Oftentimes students want to start with word count, but that's actually the last thing that you want to do.
Hello, my name is Brianne Boyle, and I'm a master counselor with CollegeWise. What that means is that I work with students to help them find good colleges that fit them and to get their applications turned in on time, which includes helping them with their college essays, which I think for the most part, most of my students that I've worked with, and I've worked with hundreds of them, the essay is the thing that makes them the most stressed out. So let's talk about it. I have a couple tips for you. This first tip is just be honest. Just be honest about who you are. Colleges want to know who you are as a person, what makes you tick, what are the things that you're excited about, and they don't want to see you just trying to impress them. When you try to impress them in your essays, you just sound like everybody else. You sound like everybody else because you're just saying the same stories. You'll see that there's a theme throughout all of my tips where they all kind of mash together to give you the right roadmap for what you're writing in your essays. So just be honest with yourself. They don't need to see, every impressive thing that you've done. They just need to see the things that you're excited to share with them. Adults have a really hard time with this tip. So parents always want you to basically do a written version of a PowerPoint of all of your best accomplishments. But when you do that, you just sound like somebody else. You sound like a robot. You don't sound like who you are. So don't try to impress them by just putting in your top most amazing things. They're going to see that. It'll be in your application. It's usually the opposite of what you've been told to do, that you've been told to be impressive for colleges for the last couple of years, right? In middle school and high school. But I'm telling you that in the essay, that's not the place to do that. So make your goal to just be yourself when you're writing. Tip number 2, own your story. Make this story your story. Make it be something that somebody else can't do or talk about. So listen, I know that a lot of high school students are doing basically the same stuff. You're playing sports, you're involved in clubs, you're doing, your dance, you're doing your community service, you're hanging out with friends, you have family responsibilities. For the most part, most teenagers' lives are very similar. So they get that everybody's going to have essays that might be similar. If you want to write about your sport and your soccer team, that's totally okay. It doesn't mean that you have to come up with the most amazing different essay topic from other people. It just means that when you write about your essay topic, it should be your own. So go ahead, write about the soccer team. There will be hundreds of other soccer essays. That's okay. You can own your story in a couple of ways. Add more detail. Tell us about the traditions you have on your team, or your favorite part of doing soccer, or that one thing that happened in a game that was funny, or the reason why you picked up soccer, or something that makes it specifically you, something that somebody else couldn't write about when they're writing about their soccer team. So add that detail. If you're having a hard time adding that detail for the topic that you've picked, that might not be your topic, and maybe you need to pick a different one. So just ask yourself, could anybody else be telling this story? And if they can, think of that bullet point above that. Add more detail or pick a different one. And essay tip number 3, don't repeat information. Of course, they're going to see that you did soccer on your application and your list of activities, but like we said before, you can tell them new stories in your essay. So you can do this in a couple of ways. Either share new information that's not on the application, right? So even if you're sharing about something that you've already done. So if you're going to talk about your dance that you're super passionate about, or playing violin that you've done for years, that's totally fine. It'll be on your application, but share a completely new thing that they won't know about. Maybe talk about what inspired you, to start playing violin, or the things that make it something that you're passionate about. Or maybe that you played violin and did a concert that was impromptu in the park for someone. Just some little nugget that they're not going to get from your list of application items. So just your activities and things that they're going to see, try to make it a little bit different. Or pick a story that's not on the application at all. So for example, I've had some students who've written about totally different things. I had a student who wrote about his passion for fishing and growing up and learning how to fish with his dad. And we learned all about who he was, his growth with his relationship with his dad, things that he loved to do that weren't just on his application. And one of my favorite essays of all time that I talk about all the time is my student who wrote an entire essay about macaroni and cheese. And I know that sounds absurd, but the essay really told us who she was. We learned her passion for cooking that she discovered while making macaroni and cheese, her interest in doing things with her family, and a little bit of her humor. And none of those things were on the application. I've also had students who've told stories about, things that are on the application, but they've just added that detail, and it's something that really can set them apart. So my last tip for you is sound like yourself. This isn't an academic essay. You can start a sentence with I. This is not something that you're going to read again. Your application essays are going to be read by admissions folks. They're going to be read by your family maybe after you submit it, and that's pretty much it. So don't worry about being so formal. This is something where, of course, you should have good grammar and make sure someone checks it to, catch typos and things, of course. But you can be casual and you can be yourself and use your own voice. So ask yourself this, would you say it like this if you were talking to your favorite teacher? And I pick favorite teacher because it should not be your bestie, because with your bestie, you're going to do that next bullet point, which you might use slang or text speak or, be a little too casual. But, remember your age on the formality level here. You're a teenager. It's totally okay to sound like one. Just make sure that you're writing it in a respectful manner and you should be fine. No thesaurus allowed. If it's not a word you would use in normal conversation, then it's going to look really obvious and it's not going to sound like your authentic self. So good luck with your essays. They're going to be great. If you just remember these tips you've learned today, I'm sure you'll have an awesome essay.
Fabulous. Thanks, Brianne, for those informative slides. Hi, everyone. My name is Dewey Wilmot. I'm a college counselor in San Jose, California, and a proud member of the Western Association for College Admissions Counseling. I want to thank you all again for attending today's college fair, and in particular, attending this awesome session on the personal statement. So we've learned a lot of great things today, and we're shortly going to start a Q&A session with everyone still in the room here. I did want to point out to everyone a few resources from my friend Ethan Sawyer, also known as the College Essay Guy. You can see some links on the screen here, and these are just a few of the many, many resources Ethan makes available to students, not only in California and Nevada, but around the world. So let me point these out to you quickly. The first URL is an application hub, and there's all sorts of information on here about the personal statement as well as other aspects of the college admissions process. Second link is for a free college essay feedback through Ethan's program called Matchlighters. So through this program, students apply to be connected with a college counselor like myself, who is going to provide up to 6 hours of free feedback and counseling on your essays and personal statement. There is a short application to complete to verify eligibility, but I encourage you to check it out if this sounds like something that might benefit you. There are hundreds of counselors helping students all over the world. The last link is for a page specifically devoted to essay resources. And not only are there guides for the personal statement like we've been discussing today, but there's also guides for things like the UC personal insight questions, which are the UC college essays, for individual college supplemental essays, which a lot of the private schools and some of the out-of-state public schools have supplemental essays. So that last URL is a great resource for that. So I want to encourage everybody to take advantage of Ethan's generosity. And we will be wrapping up the recording right now and opening up for a Q&A. So thanks again for paying attention, and we look forward to talking to you live. Julio, you want to kick us off here?
Yeah. So thanks everyone for the great questions that were being submitted. This is great. So there's a couple of questions that came in the chat or the Q&A that I think would be good for everyone to address. Some questions about like specifics, like how long should an essay be and how to work within those limitations. I think the important thing to remember is Jenny's point that she had on her slides, that yes, it's important to be mindful of word counts or character counts, but don't start with that in mind. That's kind of the final editing thing you have to work with to kind of pare down your responses to fit those limitations. So there are going to be some schools that have character counts, meaning how many like actual spaces and letters and all those different types of symbols that you can use, as well as word counts. And those are hard and fast. There's no way to work around them. Some systems won't let you even submit your application if you're over the character count. It'll say it's an error. Otherwise, they might even get cut off, so your answer will be incomplete, which is kind of that you wouldn't want that to happen either way either. So whatever the word or character count is, stick with that, and just know that it's going to be different amounts for the character or word counts on all kinds of essays, but it can be anything from 650 words on the Common App to 100 characters on some supplemental essays, and everything in between. I think, Brian, you had a question that you wanted to answer, right?
I do. I'm scrolling back up here. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So the question was, could you do your personal struggle through life? Like, could it be a sappy, truthful story about yourself as the topic? And I think folks are sometimes worried about writing about that, but I'm here to tell you that really there isn't a topic that's bad. There isn't really a bad topic. Certainly you can do not so great things with any topic, right? Like you could get preachy about a particular topic, or, you know, get on a soapbox a little too much or something like that. But really any topic that you feel comfortable with that kind of hits all these things we've talked about, it lets us get to know you. You know, you're using stories that we haven't heard before. You're not repeating a bunch of information from your application. You're totally fine, even if you feel like it's, you know, a topic that might be a little bit heavier. That's okay.
Julio, I'll answer. Diksha's got a great question here about, do colleges give us lists of essays to choose from, or do they give us specific ones? It's going to be both, everybody. It depends on the school. There are some schools don't even have essays. Most schools have at least like one essay, but it'll depend. And sometimes there'll be a list of a couple prompts, pick one of them. Sometimes there's 5 prompts, pick 2 of them. So it's really going to vary. You want to make sure that whatever your college list is, that you sit down, make a document, make a spreadsheet that shows like what prompts are for what schools. When are these going to be available? So I posted the link to the Common App essay prompts, which are available now, but most of the supplemental essays are not going to be available till later this summer. The colleges start giving those out maybe as early as May, but really through the summer, and by the beginning of September, all the prompts are pretty much out. So you can start working on the Common App essay for sure right now. The UC prompts, I don't think they've confirmed those yet. Do either of you guys know if that's true? But they should be out relatively soon, the UC prompts. And then the UC prompts typically are 8 of them, choose 4 to submit, any 4.
Yeah, I haven't heard the confirmation that it's been finalized yet, but I haven't heard any suggestions that they might be changing for next year either. So just a quick reminder, since this question also came up a couple times, that the recording of this presentation will be available on the same website you went to register for the college fair. So on the StriveScan website, there'll be a recording of this specific presentation that you can go back to and revisit. And so if you weren't able to get some of the resources or want to remember Brianne's tips or anything like that, you can go back and revisit some of these presentations and any of the other ones that were available today that you might not have been able to make time for as part of participating in the college fair. The other question I wanted to have kind of all of us chime in on is, how should students answer the why supplemental essay? This is a great question. I'm glad you asked that, because this is probably the hardest question that it's out there, because it seems simple, but this is also one of those areas where you have typically the shortest amount of space to write, and you have to be the most specific with. So it requires a lot of work, and this is where I encourage students to spend a good amount of time researching as much as possible the colleges, and specifically asking themselves the whole time, like, why do I want to apply here? Is it the prestige, the location, the major, the environment, the community, how I see myself fitting in? There's all kinds of responses, and you don't have to hit on every single one of those aspects. You have to hit on the ones that really matter to you to showcase, this is why I think I'm a good fit for this institution. Dewey, Brianne, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm happy to add to that. I do think you covered pretty much all of it. I think those students who do the research and take notes, the students that I work with, I find that those who take good notes as they're researching schools, what things popped out and stood out to them that they liked, what things did they not like as much. It was so much easier for them to go back later and remember, some of those things that stuck out to them. And one thing that I will say that's a what not to do in the why this school essay is, don't just do kind of what everybody else does, which is, I bleed red and white, the colors of the school, or like, I go Trojans, or whatever the school is that you're applying to. Don't just talk about how you've loved following them on football. Like, that's a lot of stuff that those colleges hear all the time. So, really getting into what Julio said, which is, why are you a good fit for the school? Find that thing in there that made you go, oh my gosh, I can picture myself or connecting in this way to this school, and then focus on that. You don't have to hit every topic, and you can stay away from kind of like the big spirited things they're going to hear all the time.
Yeah, and along that same point, like, you also don't want to parrot back all of these rankings or statistics of success that these colleges have, because they know that. They're telling you them. So if you say, like, yeah, I want to go here because it was top ranked and blah, 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 it's like, cool. So do a lot of other people. But why do you want to be amongst this top ranked community in whatever major area, whatever that's being qualified? Rankings are a whole nother discussion that we can go into, but short story, don't listen to them. But that's it. Let's keep moving. Dewey, was there a question that you wanted to respond to?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of people are asking about, like, what style of writing, are there taboo topics? Is it important to be unique? So Brianne already mentioned there's no real taboo topics, but there's taboo ways of writing about things, which are, you get too preachy about things. I mean, there are taboo topics, inappropriate topics. You guys should know what these are. Humor is fine, but it shouldn't be crude humor or rude humor. You don't want to be judgmental. Let's say you had a situation where there was an awkward situation in your life and you want to write about it. Like, by all means, like, provide some details, but really the emphasis should be on what you learned from this experience, how you grew, how you changed, maybe how you impacted somebody else, how somebody else impacted you. You want the style to be personal. These are, like first day of English class, sometimes your teacher asks you to write a reflection about your summer. What did you do? What did you learn? How did you grow? This is more the style of the essay. It's not a persuasive essay with the standard like intro, body, conclusion. One of Brianne's slides mentioned not repeating yourself. So in a regular school essay, you're often creating a thesis, supporting it, restating your thesis. That's not really the point of this personal essay. You want points to get across. You want to show your readers certain things about you, but you can do this in ways that are a little more creative, a little more like prose narrative. Someone else asked about, can we write poetry or a song? The answer to that is pretty much no. You definitely want to do like prose writing with this. However, it can be creative. You can have dialogue, you can be telling a story. Bottom line is, make it specific. That's how you make it unique. Like, tell your story. Other people have similar stories, but nobody is you. So as long as you're being specific to yourself and being true to who you are and what you're telling, then it's going to be unique. And it'll be a good essay.
Brianne, was there something you wanted to chime in on as one of the questions?
Well, I saw two that were about majors, so I figured I'd tag those kind of together. So a question about, do our essays have to connect to our major? Do all the essays? And then if we're undecided about the major, should we be open about that, having a wide range of interests, or should we try to focus on one? So the first question is, not all of your essays need to focus on your major. In fact, it would probably be boring if they read 4 essays that all talked about your interest in engineering, right? So, share other parts of you. If there is an essay that says, why are you interested in this major? That's the perfect time to talk about it. If there isn't, and it comes up in your essay, because sometimes that happens, sometimes you have a strong interest in something, you're an art student and your main essay is talking about how art has been really important in your life. It's okay that you're going to talk about 2 topics, but just make sure that, again, they're different stories. So if you talk about art in your main essay, then if your why major essay, add some more insight to that so they learn some more about you. But you don't have to use it for everything. And then with the undecided, yes, I'm here to tell you it is okay. Most colleges, in fact, there's only a few I could probably count on one hand that don't let you go in undecided. So they're built for you to go in undecided, discover what your passions are, and then declare a major. A college is not going to fault you for being undecided. That's why they offer it. So it's totally fine to do that. I think where some students miss is it's okay to be undecided, but it's not okay to not have thought about it. So in your essay saying, listen, I'm applying undecided, just like you asked in your question, talk about other interests. Say, I'm undecided, but I took an economics class and it really excited me. And I'm really excited about maybe taking some economics and discovering that. But on the other side, I really love creative writing. So I'm really excited to go to college where I can take a mix of, English and creative writing classes and economics and, find what my passion is. That's you being a student that's showing a really strong interest in learning and, you've thought through some of your passions. And I don't think there's a college around that would think that that's a bad answer to undecided. So don't feel bad about it. Just make sure you express some of your other interests.
So I feel like we have to address the elephant in the room, COVID. How do students talk about COVID on these essays? Because, everyone was impacted by the pandemic in all kinds of different ways. And the important thing for you to know is that on the Common App and on several other application platforms, there are spaces specifically dedicated for you to talk about how the pandemic impacted your life. And for some students, it could be, getting sick or family members, or loved ones passing away, really serious things. And for other students, it might be like, I didn't see it reflected very much, but during this time, I was able to kind of get out of the grind of all these activities and was able to rediscover interests and passions and hobbies of mine. So, I mean, you can use that space very, very creatively to discuss just what happened over the past year or how this pandemic has really impacted you. Don't feel like you have to make your primary essay all about that, because while this has been a really crazy, challenging year for lots and lots of people, that's not the only year you've lived. That's not the only experience that you've had. That's not the only thing that defines you. So you feel free, if you can touch on it if you want and kind of use that as kind of a launching point into something else. But again, don't feel like you have to have just everything focused around that one experience, because that's something that everybody lived. Literally, everybody in the world has lived through and will have different takes and opinions and stories about. So your experience is valuable, and there will be space for you to discuss that experience on an application if it's not the primary essay. Dewey, was there another question you wanted to respond to?
Yeah, sure. Someone asked not use the thesaurus. So big words. So if you know the word, by all means use it. If you're repeating a lot of words, use a thesaurus, but don't pick words that you don't know. Like if you might use that to jog your memory, like, oh yeah, that's a good word. So definitely use them to get ideas, right? But the goal is not to kind of sound like who you are not. One of the very most important things about these essays, everyone, is that you want them to be authentic. Okay, so it hasn't been brought up yet that if you have people reading over your essays, a lot of times the very well-meaning adults in your life want to really edit it up and make it sound like more mature, more fancy or whatever. That can actually really backfire on you in the sense that it's not going to be authentically you. And colleges are really keen on getting to know you, the student, what you're going to bring to the school. They're not admitting your mom and dad. They're not admitting your like very well-meaning aunt or uncle who wants to read your essays. So, if the advice you're getting is making it not sound like you, like make sure, take the ideas, but make sure it's in your own language.
Yeah, that's great. And I think since we're running out of time now, it might be good for us to start wrapping up with any final tips, suggestions that we want to pass on to students as they're going through this. I think going off of what Dewey just mentioned, one of the best things you could do to make sure that your essay sounds like you is read it out loud. If you read your essay out loud and it doesn't sound like you in conversation or you telling a story, something's off. It might have been over edited. You might have taken a different, you maybe used too much thesaurus words that you don't normally use. Just go back and edit it so that it sounds like you. But again, finding that balance between, formal, informal, academic, personal, you'll know it when you see it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll double down on this. Don't have too many cooks in the kitchen on your essay. I tell the parents that I work with that they're not allowed to read the essays. And certainly if a student shares it with their parent, that's fine. But I do that so that parents will stay out of it. And I say, this is your student's work. So students, this is your work. You can ask for ideas, but have your parents stay out of it. I'm telling you, it's the quickest way for them to ruin it, because parents love you so much that they want to overfix things, and then it will take away that voice. And I would just add to make sure, this is not as so much related to essays, but just make sure you have some really solid, likely schools on your list that you're excited about, that, aren't super huge reach schools, so that you have some really good options and some really good scholarship options at the end of this.
Yeah, great. And another thing, everyone, is start early. Like if you can, start working on your essays over the summer. It may seem like there's a lot of work to do with this, and there is, but you're going to be writing a lot of similar essays, which will end up feeding into themselves. You're not going to have to invent new essays every time, right? You're going to write one personal essay for the Common App and use that for all those schools. You'll write some why us essays. One of the counselors in the chat mentioned that you want to make sure those are really specific and not just like copy and paste the name of the college into them, but there will be similarities. So if you start early, Work on a little bit at a time. You're going to do great with this.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you panelists for giving us so much information about college essays. When you close this window, there will be a link to a very quick 4-question survey, and we would appreciate any feedback you can give us. Also, this is just one of many sessions happening today, so be sure to go sign up for other ones as well. And in about a week, you'll be able to find this recording at the same site where you registered. Thank you again, and we'll see you guys soon.